Hello children, now we move on to the next lesson, The Christmas Truce by Aaron Shepard. Before I start this lesson, tell me children, how will you feel when there is a celebration going on at home and you couldn't attend it? Imagine any celebration. It can be a birthday party, Christmas, Onam, Diwali, Vishu, any celebration. All your cousins have come, neighbors and friends are there. The party is going on, but you are somewhere far away, unable to join the celebration. You will feel sad, depressed, and left out, isn't it? This story is about a celebration, a Christmas celebration, but it is not celebrated in the usual way. How do we generally celebrate Christmas? We celebrate it with cakes and wine, sweets, carols, Christmas trees, Santa Claus, gifts, new clothes, etc. But here, this Christmas celebration takes place in the battlefield. In this story, The Christmas Truce, a brother named Tom writes a letter to his sister named Janet. Brother is a British soldier. Tom is a soldier and is fighting World War I. The two opposing teams are the British and the German soldiers. They both are opponents. So Tom belongs to the British soldier. And when it is the eve of Christmas, the enmity is forgotten between these two soldiers, the British and the German. The narrator, Tom, is writing a letter to his sister Janet, who is living in London, and is writing this letter from the battlefield of World War I. He cannot sleep till he tells her about his magical Christmas Eve. He explains, despite minimal fighting, life was dangerous and dreary, with bullets, bombs, and rain in the trenches. Despite hating the Germans, British soldiers were curious about them. The enemy trenches were very close by, and both the side soldiers faced the same situation. Christmas Eve, they saw perfect weather. The festive season, isn't it? Christmas is a festive season. By nightfall, shooting had stopped, and the soldiers enjoyed a rare silence. When Tom awoke, he saw something which he couldn't believe. He saw that the Germans had lit up Christmas trees along the barbed wire, and both the British soldiers and the German soldiers celebrated Christmas together. Tom wishes that all the countries could feel the spirit of that evening which they experienced at the border, a spirit of brotherhood. If leaders offered opposing nations goodwill instead of threat, the war will end. For your convenience, this lesson is divided into 3 modules. The first module is from the beginning of the lesson to the second paragraph on page 99. The second module is from the third paragraph on page 99 till the end of page number 101. And the third module is from page number 102 till the end of the story. In the story, the words I, me refers to Tom. The word ours refers to the British soldiers, and theirs refers to the German soldiers. Now look into your books, children. I'm going to start the story. The Christmas Truce by Aaron Shepard. This piece, set during World War I, highlights the beauty of unlikely friendships and fellowship. It is a British soldier's letter to his sister on how all enmity was forgotten as British and German soldiers celebrated Christmas together. So it's written on Christmas Day, 1914. That is early morning. My dear sister Janet, it is 2 in the morning and most of our men are asleep in their dugouts. Yet I could not sleep before writing to you about what happened here on Christmas Eve. So Tom is writing a letter to his sister Janet on Christmas Day, that is on 25th December, morning 2 o'clock. He's saying that all the other soldiers are sleeping. They are very tired after the celebration and they're sleeping in their dugouts. Dugouts means a sort of rough temporary shelter, you can say. But here, Tom cannot sleep. He cannot sleep till he tells her about his magical Christmas Eve. He's very excited. He wants to share his happiness with his sister. Now I move on to the next paragraph. In truth, what happened seems almost like a fairy tale, and if I had not been through it myself, I would scarce believe it. While you and the family sang carols before the fire there in London, I did the same with enemy soldiers here on the battlefields of France. So, Tom is trying to convey his feelings, children, his excitement, his happiness. The celebration which he had on the battlefield looked like a fairy tale to him. He could hardly believe it. He's telling Jane, while she and her family were singing carols at home in London, Tom also did the same thing. He also celebrated Christmas by singing carols, eating and enjoying with the enemy soldiers in the battlefields of France. The words scarce believe it means you would hardly believe it. Now I move on to the next paragraph. As I wrote before, there has been little serious fighting of late. Both sides are holding back until replacements come from home. We have mostly stayed in our trenches and waited. But what a terrible waiting it has been, knowing that any moment an artillery shell might land and explode beside us, killing or maiming several of us. In daylight, not daring to lift our heads above the ground for fear of getting hit by a sniper's bullet. Also, it has been raining every day, and we have to bail the water out with pots and pans from our trenches. The rain has made the trenches muddy. It splatters and cakes everything and constantly sucks our boots. Now, the meaning of the words holding back until replacement came means the enemies are not fighting very seriously now. They're waiting for fresh supply of bullets. Trenches means long, deep dugouts where soldiers generally hide. Artillery shell means a large bullet generally fired from a gun. The word maiming means injury. Sniper's bullet means a hidden soldier, a bullet from a hidden soldier. Bail the water out means to take out water. The word splatters means to cover something with something wet or sticky. And the word cakes means, here it means to cover. So here Tom is telling Janet that he had already informed her in the previous letter about the battlefield and the war condition there. Soldiers were facing low supplies and they were waiting for fresh supply of bullets from their country. They were hiding in the trenches. It was a long wait, a terrible wait you can say. They knew that any moment a large bullet can be fired from the enemy side and that bullet can land beside them in the trenches and it can explode. And that explosion can kill and injure many of the British soldiers. In the daylight, the enemy can see better, isn't it? So they didn't dare to lift their head above the ground, for they feared that they could be shot dead by the hidden soldier's bullet. Moreover, the climate was also not favorable. It was raining every day, and their trenches were full of water. They had to throw this water out using pots or pans, whatever vessel they had. The rainwater had made the trenches very muddy, and it covered their shoes, it got stuck to their boots. Now I move on to the next paragraph. Through all this, we could not help feeling curious about the German soldiers across the way. After all, they faced the same dangers and problems that we did and slogged about in the same muck. What's more, their first trench is only 50 yards from ours. Between us lay no man's land, bordered on both sides by barbed wire. Yet they were close enough. We sometimes heard their voices. The word slogged means worked hard. Muck means mud. It's a colloquial way of saying. No man's land refers to the land between the British and the German army, which is not controlled by either sides. And this land is generally covered with barbed wires. So, here in this paragraph, Tom tells that despite hating the German soldiers, these British soldiers were very curious about them. Enemy trenches were close by, and the soldiers faced the same situation. Though there was a no man's land, that is the land between the British and the German army, which is not controlled by either sides, their first trench was only 50 yards away from the British trench. So they were very close by, and these British soldiers even heard their voices. Now, the next paragraph. Of course, we hated them when they killed our friends, but at other times we joked about them and almost felt as if we had something in common. And now it seems they felt the same. The British army hated the German soldiers when they killed a British soldiers. Obviously, you will feel very bad, very hurt, very angry, isn't it, if one of this British soldier is killed? But they also joked about those German soldiers. They were sure that the German soldiers also felt and thought the same about these British soldiers. Now, the next paragraph. Just yesterday morning, Christmas Eve day, we had a first good freeze. We welcomed it as it froze the mud solid. Everything was tinged white with frost while a bright sun shone over everything. Perfect Christmas weather. So on Christmas Eve, that is on 24th December, they had an unusually cold day. The temperature was 0 degree and the muddy water became ice. That is, it became solid. So the soldiers liked it, children, because now they could at least keep their feet on a firm ground. Everything looked white with the frost, and the sun was also shining. So Christmas Eve saw a perfect festive weather. It was cold, in fact very cold, but sun was also there. Everything was covered with white frost and it was shining because of the sunlight. So it looked like a perfect Christmas weather. So now I come to the end of the first module.